A navy cashmere coat hung on the chair where it didn't belong. $3,000 reduced to decoration in a studio apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Marcus Webb stood at the window of the cramped Bronx walk-up, watching December snow blur the neon signs below, and wondered how much longer he could stomach his own experiment. 6 weeks ago, he'd been signing acquisition papers in a Park Avenue penthouse. Now he wore thrift store flannels and answered to Mark at a construction site in Hunts Point, and his fiancée, Vanessa, hadn't called in 4 days. But before we step deeper into this choice that would unravel everything, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys that test what love really means. The apartment was a tax write-off property his company owned. Ironic, really, that he'd hidden in a building he technically controlled. Marcus had stripped himself down to nearly nothing. A prepaid phone, a checking account with $2,000, work boots that gave him blisters, and a fake backstory about being between jobs after his startup failed. He'd told Vanessa he needed time to find himself before the wedding, that he was taking a construction gig to clear his head and reconnect with something real. She'd laughed, that crystalline laugh he'd fallen for at a charity gala 2 years ago, and said she admired his spiritual journey. She'd kissed him at the door of his real apartment, her Chanel perfume lingering like a contract, and promised she'd be waiting when he was done playing working class. That phrase had lodged in his chest like a splinter. Marcus came from nothing. A single mother in Detroit, utility shutoffs, scholarship essays written by flashlight. He'd built Webb Industries from an algorithms concept into a multi-million-dollar enterprise before 35. But somewhere in the champagne toasts and board meetings, he'd started wondering if Vanessa loved him, or the empire he represented. Her social media was a shrine to their lifestyle. Private jets, opening nights, his black card photographed beside caviar. She tagged him like a luxury brand, and when he'd quietly suggested postponing the wedding to focus on a new humanitarian project, low-cost housing development, she'd gone silent for 3 days before resurfacing with a photographer to plan their rustic chic venue. So he'd designed the experiment. Strip away the money, the name, the power. Become invisible. See if she'd look for him. Really look. Not just call his assistant or wait for him to return to the life she curated online. The radiator clanked. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket. The cheap one, not the encrypted executive line. No messages. Vanessa's Instagram showed her at a holiday party in Manhattan, draped over someone's shoulder. He couldn't see whose, champagne flute raised, caption reading, "Living my best life, while Bay finds his zen." 300 likes in 40 minutes. Marcus set the phone on the windowsill and pressed his forehead to the cold glass. Outside, a woman struggled with grocery bags on the icy sidewalk, and a man in a maintenance uniform stopped to help her. Something simple. Something Vanessa would never notice because it wouldn't fit her aesthetic. His knuckles were raw from work, his back ached from carrying drywall, and for the first time in years, Marcus slept dreamlessly from pure exhaustion. There was a strange freedom in it, in being nobody, in conversations at the site about football and child support instead of market volatility. But beneath it ran a current of dread. Each day Vanessa didn't reach out, didn't ask where he really was, or if he was okay. The answer to his unspoken question became clearer. He thought about calling her, ending it, but something stubborn in him, maybe the part that still remembered being powerless, needed to see how long she'd wait, how little she'd wonder. The snow fell heavier now, erasing the city's edges. Marcus turned from the window and saw the cashmere coat again, a ghost of who he'd been. Or maybe who he'd never stopped being underneath the fortune. Just a man trying to figure out if anyone would love him without it. The construction site opened at 6, when the sky was still charcoal, and the coffee from the food cart tasted like it had been brewed in a paint can. Marcus arrived early every morning, partly because the foreman respected punctuality, mostly because the small apartment felt like a waiting room for a verdict he wasn't ready to hear. He'd learned to move differently here, slower, heavier, without the efficient precision of a man who once controlled 23 floors of mid-Manhattan real estate. Here, he was just Mark, the quiet guy who didn't talk much about his past and bought the crew bagels on Fridays. The December cold cut through his canvas jacket as he climbed the scaffolding on a renovation project in the South Bronx, a historic building being converted into subsidized housing. The irony wasn't lost on him. This was the kind of project Webb Industries funded from a distance, announced in press releases with his signature beneath phrases like, "commitment to community uplift." But he'd never stood inside the bones of one, never felt the weight of a hammer in his palm, or understood that drywall dust worked its way into everything. Your lungs, your fingernails, the creases of your tired eyes. "Mark, you're drifting again." The voice came from beside him, and Marcus turned to find Elena Ruiz crouched near a window frame, level in hand, dark hair pulled back in a braid that had come slightly loose. She was the site's lead carpenter, maybe 30, with forearms marked by old scars and new calluses, and eyes that seemed to notice everything he was trying to hide. "Sorry," Marcus said, adjusting his grip on the beam they were securing. Mind wandered. "I noticed." Elena's tone was dry but not unkind. She'd been watching him since his first day, when he'd shown up with brand new boots and hands too soft for the work. He'd expected suspicion or hazing, but she'd simply handed him gloves and showed him how to hold a circular saw without losing a finger. "You measure twice and cut once, but you look at your phone like you're waiting for someone to tell you you're allowed to exist." Marcus almost dropped the beam. That obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. Elena marked the beam with a pencil, her movements economical and certain. "Most of the guys here don't look past their next paycheck. But you carry yourself like someone who's used to being listened to, even when you're trying not to be." For a moment, Marcus considered deflecting, but something about the job site had worn down his usual defenses. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the anonymity, or the fact that Elena didn't want anything from him except competent work. "Relationship stuff," he said finally. "Trying to figure out if someone misses me, or just misses what I represent." Elena was quiet, lining up the level. Then, "That's a lonely question to live inside." "Yeah." Marcus held the beam steady as she secured it. "Yeah, it is." They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of construction filling the space. Hammers, drills, someone's radio playing bachata 2 floors down. Marcus had always thought of silence as emptiness, something to be filled with conference calls or strategic planning. But this was different. This silence had texture. "You eat lunch?" Elena asked around 11, wiping sawdust from her hands. "Usually just grab something from the cart." The cart sells regret wrapped in aluminum foil. She pulled a thermos and 2 sandwiches from her pack. "My abuela makes too much food and I can't let it go to waste." "You like pernil?" Marcus didn't know what pernil was, but he nodded. They sat on stacked plywood, the winter sun struggling through December clouds, and Elena handed him a sandwich that tasted like garlic and slow-cooked pork, and something he couldn't name. Maybe just care, the kind that came from someone's grandmother waking up early to cook. "This is incredible," he said. "Abuela believes food is love made visible." Elena took a bite of her own sandwich, looking out at the neighborhood below. Bodegas with hand-painted signs, a church with a crumbling facade, kids in puffy coats walking home from school. She's lived in the same building for 43 years, watched it almost get torn down twice. This project, she gestured at the renovation around them, means people like her get to stay. Means the neighborhood doesn't just become condos for people who will never learn their neighbors' names. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He'd approved the funding for this project from a conference room, looking at projected returns and tax incentives. He'd never considered it might mean a grandmother gets to stay in her home. "That means something to you?" he asked, keeping neighborhoods intact. "It means everything." Elena's voice carried weight beyond the words. "I grew up 3 blocks from here. Left for a while, thought I'd escape to somewhere shinier. But shiny doesn't mean solid. Came back, learned carpentry from my tio, started building instead of running." She glanced at him, and for a moment her gaze held his. Steady, searching, present in a way that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't been in years. "Sometimes the best thing you can do is build something that lasts for people who deserve to stay." Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket, the cheap one. He ignored it, but Elena noticed. "The person you're waiting for," she said quietly. "Have they called?" "No." The word came out heavier than he intended. Elena nodded, no judgment in her expression, just understanding. "Then maybe that's your answer." She stood, brushed crumbs from her jeans, and extended a hand to pull him up. Her grip was strong, certain, warm even through the cold. And when Marcus stood, he realized he was reluctant to let go. Not because of attraction exactly, but because it had been so long since someone had touched him, like he was just a man who might need help standing. "Back to work," Elena said. But she smiled, small, almost shy, like she'd felt something shift too. The days began to blur into a rhythm Marcus hadn't known he was capable of. Early mornings that smelled like diesel and coffee. The particular ache in his shoulders that meant he'd actually used his body for something. Evenings where he'd collapse on the narrow apartment bed and sleep without the usual parade of anxiety about quarterly projections. And through it all, like a quiet melody underneath, there was Elena. She didn't try to fix him or ask probing questions. She just existed alongside him with a steadiness that felt radical in its simplicity. They fell into an easy partnership on the site. Marcus learned to anticipate which tool she'd need next, and Elena stopped checking his measurements twice. During lunch breaks, they'd sit in whatever corner caught the winter sun, and she'd tell him about her family, about her tio who'd taught her that good craftsmanship was a form of dignity, about her younger brother studying engineering at CUNY. "He's going to build bridges," Elena said one afternoon, her breath fogging in the December air. "Real ones, the kind that connect places. I build walls and floors, but he's going to build things that help people cross over to somewhere better." "You say that like what you do is lesser," Marcus said. "But walls and floors are what make people safe, what let them rest." Elena looked at him then, really looked, and something in her expression made his pulse stutter. "You have a way of saying things that sound like you've thought about them for a long time." "Maybe I have." Marcus unwrapped the sandwich she'd brought him. She'd been bringing him lunch for a week now, always with some excuse about her abuela cooking too much. "I spent years building things that don't matter. I'm trying to figure out what does." "And have you?" The question hung between them. Marcus thought about Vanessa, who still hadn't called, whose Instagram now showed her at a spa resort in Connecticut with friends he didn't recognize. He thought about the cashmere coat in his apartment, the life waiting for him like a costume he'd left in the dressing room. And he thought about this, the cold scaffolding, the satisfaction of a wall properly framed, Elena's quiet presence beside him. "I'm starting to," he said. That night, Marcus made a mistake. He checked his real phone, the one connected to Web Industries, the one he'd promised himself he'd leave off. 73 unread emails. A text from his assistant about a delayed merger. A message from his mother asking if he was eating enough. And one from Vanessa, sent 3 days ago. "Hope you're finding whatever you're looking for. I'm getting my nails done for the Chamberlain holiday party. Miss you. Miss you." 2 words that should have meant something, but felt as hollow as the luxury apartments his company built for people who were never home. Marcus turned the phone off and stood at the window, watching snow drift past the streetlights. His reflection stared back, leaner now, stubble he hadn't bothered to shave, eyes that looked tired but somehow more awake than they had in years. He didn't recognize himself, and the realization didn't frighten him the way he thought it would. The next morning, Elena noticed immediately. Rough night? Something like that. Marcus took the coffee she offered him. She'd started bringing two, claiming the bodega was on her way. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. How do you know when you're living your real life versus just performing someone else's version of it? Elena set down her coffee, considering. My abuela has this saying, La verdad vive en las manos. Truth lives in the hands. She means you can tell what matters to someone by what they build, what they touch, what they reach for when no one's watching. She paused, pulling on her work gloves. I think you know your real life by whether you feel like yourself inside it, or like you're waiting for permission to exist. The words landed somewhere deep. Marcus had spent 2 years waiting for Vanessa to notice him. Really notice, not just photograph him. He'd built an empire, but felt invisible inside his own life. And now, standing on a construction site in work boots that had finally stopped giving him blisters, sharing coffee with a woman who brought him lunch because her grandmother believed food was love made visible, he felt more present than he had in years. I think I've been performing for a long time, Marcus said quietly. I know. Elena's voice was gentle. I could tell from the first day. The way you apologized for taking up space, like you'd forgotten you were allowed to just be a person. She met his eyes, and the morning light caught in hers, brown with flecks of amber, warm and unguarded. But you're getting better at it, at just being here. Something passed between them then, unspoken, but undeniable. Not desire exactly, but recognition. The way two people see each other clearly and aren't afraid of what they find. Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack, not from force, but from the quiet, persistent presence of someone who didn't need him to be anyone other than who he was in this moment. Elena, he started, not knowing how to finish, but she was already standing, already moving back to work. Though she looked back once with something in her expression that might have been hope, or might have been fear, or might have been both. Come on, Mark, she said, and the name felt less like a lie now. We've got a building to finish. Marcus followed her, aware that he was building something else too. Something he hadn't planned for, something that felt dangerously real. And for the first time in 6 weeks, he wasn't thinking about the experiment at all. He was thinking about the way Elena's hands moved when she worked, certain and capable and kind. He was thinking about truth living in the hands, and what his own hands were reaching for when no one was watching. They were reaching for this. For her. For the terrifying possibility that he'd been testing the wrong person all along. The crisis came on a Tuesday, disguised as coincidence. Marcus was 40 feet up on scaffolding, securing window frames with Elena, when his cheap phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. Had learned to ignore it, actually. Trained himself to exist in the present tense of hammers and sawdust, and Elena's quiet commentary about the building's bones. But something made him check. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Marcus Webb. We need to talk about your fiancé. Meet me at Dante's Coffee on 184th, 3 p.m. today. Jay. His hands went cold despite his gloves. You okay? Elena was watching him, concern creasing her forehead. You just went pale. Yeah, Marcus pocketed the phone, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. I need to leave early today. Family thing. The lie tasted like rust in his mouth. Elena nodded slowly, something shifting behind her eyes. Not suspicion exactly, but awareness that he was holding something back. They'd spent 3 weeks building toward honesty, and now he could feel the fragile structure of it beginning to sway. Okay, she said quietly. I hope everything's all right. Dante's Coffee was the kind of place that existed in every New York neighborhood. Linoleum floors, fluorescent lights, coffee that tasted like history and burnt expectations. Marcus arrived at 2:55 and ordered something he didn't want, scanning the scattered afternoon crowd. At 3:02, a woman in her mid-40s walked in, cashmere scarf and designer bag incongruous against the diner's worn booths. She spotted him immediately, as if she'd known exactly what to look for. Marcus Webb, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Or should I call you Mark the construction worker? His stomach dropped. Who are you? Jessica Cordova. I'm a private investigator. She set a manila folder on the table between them, her expression professionally neutral, but not unkind. I was hired 5 weeks ago to look into your disappearance. Or rather, your deliberate vanishing act. Hired by whom? Your fiancé's family. The Harringtons were concerned about their daughter marrying a man who'd suddenly decided to find himself doing manual labor. Jessica opened the folder, revealing photographs. Marcus at the construction site, entering his Bronx apartment, sitting with Elena during lunch. They wanted to know if you were having a breakdown, an affair, or planning to drain joint accounts before the wedding. Marcus's jaw tightened. Vanessa sent investigators after me? Not Vanessa. Her father. But here's the interesting part. Jessica pulled out another set of photos. These showed Vanessa at restaurants, at parties, at what looked like a penthouse apartment that wasn't Marcus's. And in several of them, she was with the same man, tall, silver-haired, distinguished. While you've been testing her loyalty by pretending to be poor, she's been spending quite a bit of time with Richard Ashford. He's a real estate developer, widowed, net worth around $800 million. The world tilted slightly. Marcus stared at the photos, at Vanessa's hand on Ashford's arm, at the way she leaned into him with the same practiced elegance she'd once leaned into Marcus at charity galas. They're not hiding it, Jessica continued. She's been introducing him as a family friend and mentor, but the staff at Oriole says they've had dinner there 4 times in 3 weeks. Always order the same wine. Always stay until closing. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Not heartbreak exactly, but the clean snap of certainty. He'd been so focused on testing Vanessa's loyalty that he hadn't considered she might be conducting her own experiment, shopping for an upgrade while he played poor. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Your client hired you to investigate me, not her. Because I don't like being used to spy on people who are clearly trying to figure their lives out. Jessica gestured at the photos of him with Elena. And because you should know, the Harringtons are planning an intervention. They think you're having a mental health crisis and are considering legal options to postpone the wedding or access your assets for protection. Your fiancé hasn't discouraged them. The coffee had gone cold in Marcus's cup. He thought about the cashmere coat, about Vanessa's Instagram captions, about the way she'd kissed him goodbye and called his truth-seeking a spiritual journey while apparently auditioning his replacement. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. Nothing. I'm closing this case today and telling the Harringtons I found nothing concerning. What you do with this information is your business. Jessica stood, then paused. For what it's worth, the woman in these photos, Elena Ruiz, I ran a background check. She's exactly who she appears to be. Carpenter, volunteers at a community center, takes care of her grandmother, has never Googled your real name. Whatever you're building with her, it's not transactional. After Jessica left, Marcus sat in the booth for a long time. The photographs spread before him like evidence of his own foolishness. He'd thought he was testing Vanessa, but really he'd been testing himself. His worth, his identity, his ability to be loved without the armor of wealth. And the answer was devastating in its clarity. Vanessa had never loved him at all. She'd loved the idea of him, the Instagram version, the man who could elevate her into the life she believed she deserved. But Elena, his phone buzzed. The real one, the Web Industries line. A text from Vanessa. The Harringtons want to move the wedding up to February. Richard thinks we should strike while the market's hot. Can you be done with your little sabbatical by then? We have a tasting at Fiancée next week, Richard thinks. Not I think, or I miss you, or are you okay? Just Richard thinks. And a tasting at a $400 per person restaurant while he'd been eating sandwiches made by Elena's grandmother on a construction site. Marcus typed back, "Who's Richard?" The response came immediately. "Oh, you know, Daddy's friend from the club. He's been so helpful with wedding planning while you've been MIA." Marcus turned off the phone. Then he gathered the photographs, left cash on the table, and walked out into the December cold. The 4 train would take him back to the Bronx, back to the small apartment, back to the life he'd built from nothing. But for the first time since starting this experiment, he didn't know if he wanted to return to who he'd been before. Because the terrifying truth was this: he'd fallen for Elena. Somewhere between the sawdust and the shared lunches and the way she'd told him truth lives in the hands, he'd stopped performing and started feeling. And now he had to decide: tell her the truth and risk losing the only real thing he'd found, or keep lying and lose himself entirely. The train rattled through the tunnel, and Marcus watched his reflection in the dark window, a ghost suspended between 2 lives, belonging fully to neither. Marcus didn't go back to the apartment. He walked instead, letting the December cold work its way through his canvas jacket until he couldn't feel his fingers, until the physical discomfort matched the chaos in his chest. He walked past bodegas strung with Christmas lights, past apartment buildings where families were visible through windows, eating dinner, arguing, laughing, living their small, enormous lives. He walked until he found himself outside the community center, where Elena had mentioned she volunteered on Tuesday nights, teaching carpentry basics to teenagers. Through the frosted window, he could see her, sleeves rolled up, showing a kid how to properly grip a chisel, her patience evident in every gesture. She looked so entirely herself, so solid and real, that Marcus felt the full weight of his deception crash over him like a wave. He'd lied to her. Not directly, but through omission, through performance, through the careful construction of Mark, who was just a guy between jobs, and not Marcus Webb, who owned the shell company that owned the building they were renovating, who could buy the entire neighborhood if he wanted, whose fiancée was currently auditioning his replacement while he played poor to test her loyalty. The class ended at 8. Marcus waited outside, snow beginning to fall in earnest now, and when Elena emerged, she stopped short at seeing him. "Mark, what are you doing here?" Then, registering his expression, "What happened? Can we walk?" His voice came out rough. "I need to tell you something, and I need to be moving when I do it." They walked toward Crotona Park, the city muffled by snowfall, and for several blocks Marcus couldn't find the words. Elena didn't push, just walked beside him with her hands in her pockets, her presence steady as always. "I lied to you," Marcus finally said. "Not about everything, but about enough that it matters." Elena stopped walking. "Okay. My name isn't Mark, it's Marcus. Marcus Webb." He watched her face for recognition, but saw only patient attention. "I'm the CEO of Webb Industries, the company that's funding the renovation project. The company that owns," he gestured vaguely at the neighborhood around them, "a lot of this." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Why?" "Because I'm engaged to someone who I thought loved me, but I started to suspect only loved what I could give her. The lifestyle, the access, the Instagram aesthetic." The words tumbled out now, urgent and messy. "So I stripped it all away, became nobody, took a construction job on one of my own projects to see if she'd look for me, if she'd care, if she'd love me without the money. And did she? No." Marcus laughed. bitter and sharp. She didn't even notice I was gone. She's been having dinner with a real estate developer worth more than I am, planning our wedding with him while I've been lying to you and everyone else at the site. Elena looked at him for a long time, snow catching in her dark hair. Her expression was unreadable. Not angry exactly, but wounded in a way that made Marcus's chest ache. "So this was all an experiment," she said quietly. "The work, the lunches, the conversations about truth living in hands. It was research for you, poverty tourism." "No." The word came out too loud, desperate. "It started that way, maybe. But Elena, what happened with you wasn't part of the plan. It was the only real thing in all of this." "Was it?" Her voice was soft but devastating. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been lying to me for 3 weeks. You let me bring you lunch, tell you about my family, share things I don't share with people, and the whole time you were a billionaire pretending to be one of us. Do you know how that feels?" Marcus reached for her, then stopped himself. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you used me as a prop in your morality play? That while I was developing real feelings for someone I thought was genuine, you were just collecting data about how the poor people live?" Elena's eyes were bright now, angry and hurt. "I told you about my abuela, about fighting to keep her building, about what this neighborhood means, and you own it. You could have solved everything I worry about with a signature, and instead you watched me struggle like it was entertainment. That's not fair." "Fair?" Elena stepped back. "You're a multimillionaire with a fiancé who wants to know about fair? I work 60-hour weeks to help my brother afford college. My abuela rations her medication because rent keeps going up in buildings your company owns, and you've been playing dress-up in our lives. I never meant to hurt you, but you did." Her voice cracked slightly. "Because She stopped, shook her head. "I thought you saw me. Really saw me, not as someone useful or decorative or part of a plan. Just as Elena. And I started to believe that maybe I saw you too, the real you under whatever you were running from. But I don't know who you are. Mark doesn't exist. And Marcus Webb," she gestured at him, taking in the thrift store clothes, the raw knuckles, the desperation. "I don't know him at all." "You do know me," Marcus said, and his voice was breaking now too. "Everything I told you was true, about feeling like I'd been performing, about building things that don't matter, about trying to figure out what's real. You taught me that. You and your abuela and the lunches, and the way you build things that last for people who deserve to stay. That was real. Was your fiancée real? Is she still real?" The question hung in the snowy air between them. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I thought I needed to test her, to prove she didn't love me. But the truth is, I think I stopped loving her a long time ago. I just didn't know how to leave, how to walk away from the life we'd built. The wedding plans, the merged social circles, the version of myself she required me to be. And now? Now I know." Marcus took a breath that hurt. "A private investigator found me today. Vanessa's family hired her to track me down, and she showed me photos of Vanessa with another man. Someone richer, someone who fits better into the life she wants. And I felt..." He searched for the word, relieved, because it meant I wasn't crazy for suspecting she didn't love me. But more than that, it meant I could finally admit I didn't love her either. Elena was crying now, silent tears cutting tracks through the snow on her face. "That doesn't fix this." "I know. You should have told me. Week 1, day 1. You should have been honest." "You're right." Marcus felt his own tears now, hot against the winter air. "I was a coward. I'm still a coward." Because the scariest part of all this wasn't Vanessa not loving me. It was realizing that I'd started falling for you. That what I felt when we were working together, or eating your abuela's sandwiches, or just sitting in silence, was more real than anything I'd felt in years. And I didn't know how to tell you without losing it. You lost it anyway, Elena said, by not trusting me with the truth. I know. Marcus wiped his face. I know I did. And I don't expect you to forgive me or trust me or... I just needed you to know that you weren't part of the experiment. You were the part that made me realize the whole experiment was stupid. That I'd been asking the wrong questions about the wrong person. That the only question that mattered was whether I was brave enough to be honest about who I am and what I want. And what do you want? Marcus looked at her. Really looked. The way she'd taught him to see things. Elena in her work jacket and steel-toed boots, tears on her face and snow in her hair, hurt and beautiful, and more real than anything in his carefully constructed life. I want to be someone worthy of you, he said. Not Mark, not Marcus Webb, the CEO, just me, whatever that is. Someone who builds things that matter and tells the truth and doesn't hide behind money or experiments or fear. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Someone you might give a second chance. Elena looked at him for a long time. Then she turned and started walking away. Elena. She stopped but didn't turn around. I need time, she said. To think. To figure out if I can trust anything about this. About you. About what I felt. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Just give me space. And then she was gone, disappearing into the snow-blurred night. And Marcus stood alone in the cold with the truth finally spoken, and everything he hadn't known he wanted walking away from him. Marcus spent 3 days in limbo. He called off the engagement via text. Cowardly, perhaps, but Vanessa's response confirmed everything. Finally. Richard and I were wondering how long you'd keep up this midlife crisis act. My lawyer will send the ring return paperwork. No tears, no questions, just logistics. The relationship dissolved like sugar in water, leaving no residue at all. He didn't go back to the construction site. Instead, he returned to his real apartment, to the life that suddenly felt like a museum of someone else's choices. The cashmere coat, the view of Central Park, the silence that money bought. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and felt absolutely nothing. On the 4th day, his assistant knocked. Sir, there's a situation. The Bronx renovation project. The contractor says there's been a work stoppage. Marcus's heart seized. What happened? The lead carpenter quit. Elena Ruiz. She just walked off site yesterday. The crew is refusing to continue without her. They're saying the building isn't safe without someone who knows its bones. Marcus was in a car within minutes. He arrived at the site to find the crew gathered outside, breath fogging in the December cold. They went silent when they saw him. Not Mark in thrift store flannel, but Marcus Webb in a tailored overcoat, the costume of power he'd tried to shed. Where's Elena? He asked. Big Tommy, the foreman, crossed his arms. You've got some nerve showing up here looking like that, Mark. Or should we call you something else? My name is Marcus Webb. I own this project, and I owe all of you an apology for the deception. Marcus looked at each of them. Men and women he'd worked alongside, who'd taught him to use tools, and shared their lunches, and treated him like an equal. I was running from my own life, and I used yours as a hiding place. That was wrong. Elena told us, Tommy said, before she left. Said she couldn't work on a building owned by someone who lied about everything he was. Where did she go? Her abuela's building. The one 4 blocks from here that your company is trying to empty out so you can renovate it into luxury condos. Tommy's voice was hard. Seems there's a burst pipe and no heat, and the management company, your management company, says it's not their problem until after the holidays. So Elena's over there trying to fix it herself because her 85-year-old grandmother is sleeping in a coat. Marcus felt shame wash through him like ice water. Take me there. Why? So you can serve her an eviction notice in person? So I can fix it, please. The building was a 5-story walk-up, with the kind of bones that remembered better days. Carved details around the entrance, mosaic tile in the lobby, the dignity of old construction. Marcus found Elena on the 3rd floor, in her grandmother's apartment, wrenching a pipe shut while water dripped steadily from the ceiling. Her grandmother sat on the couch wrapped in blankets, a small space heater glowing ineffectively nearby. Elena. She looked up, and her expression went from surprise to anger to something more complicated. Get out. Not until I fix this. Marcus set down the toolbox he'd grabbed from his trunk. His real one, professional grade, barely used. Tell me what you need. I need you to leave. After I fix the pipe. He moved toward her, and she didn't stop him. Together, in tense silence, they worked to shut off the water main and assess the damage. Marcus called his building manager on speakerphone. This is Marcus Webb. The property at 847 Prospect Avenue has a burst pipe and no heat. I want emergency crews here within the hour. Full repair, new boiler if needed. And I want the rent for every unit suspended until this building is up to code. Do you understand? Sir, that building is scheduled for... I don't care what it's scheduled for. These people deserve heat and running water. Make it happen, or I'll find someone who will. He hung up. Elena was staring at him, her grandmother watching from the couch with sharp, knowing eyes. Is that supposed to fix everything? Elena asked quietly. You write a check and I'm supposed to forget. No. Marcus set down the wrench. I know it doesn't fix anything between us. But your abuela shouldn't suffer because I'm a coward and a liar. Elena's grandmother spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of years. Mija, bring the boy some coffee. We should talk. Abuela. Elena. Coffee. Elena disappeared into the small kitchen, and Marcus found himself sitting across from the old woman, feeling like he was being evaluated by someone who'd seen through better liars than him. You're the one who broke my granddaughter's heart, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. She came home crying. Elena never cries. She's been the strong one since her mother died, since her father left. She carries everyone. And you made her cry. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry is cheap. The old woman leaned forward. My Elena, she has a gift. She sees the truth in people, sees what they're building even when they don't see it themselves. She saw something in you, something broken trying to be whole. Was she wrong? Marcus thought about the question, really thought about it. No. But I didn't trust her with the truth because I was afraid she'd see me the way everyone else does. As money, as access, as a means to an end. And that fear made me exactly what I was afraid of being. Someone who used her. And now? Now I'm trying to be honest. I'm ending the relationship I should have ended years ago. I'm trying to figure out who I am without the performance. And I'm hoping... His voice caught. That maybe Elena might give me the chance to prove I can be someone worth knowing. Abuela studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and sad. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. Yes. Does she know? I don't think I knew until I lost her. Elena returned with coffee, and the three of them sat in that small apartment while outside, emergency repair trucks began to arrive. Marcus explained everything. The engagement, the experiment, the private investigator, Vanessa's betrayal that wasn't really betrayal because there had been no real love to betray. He explained about feeling invisible inside his own life, about the construction site being the first place he'd felt seen in years. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said to Elena. I'm asking for the chance to earn back your trust. Slowly, honestly, however long it takes. And what about your life? The company, the penthouses, the world you came from? Elena's voice was careful, guarded. Do you really think you can just walk away from all that? I'm not walking away. I'm changing how I show up in it. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his email. I spent the last 3 days drafting a proposal. Web Industries is creating a new division focused on affordable housing preservation. Real preservation. Working with communities, not displacing them. And I want you to run it. Elena's eyes widened. What? Not as my employee, as my partner. You know these buildings, these neighborhoods. You know what matters. I have the resources. Together we could actually do something that lasts. He paused. And if you say no, the division happens anyway. Because you were right. I own buildings where people struggle, and I've been signing papers without seeing faces. That changes now, whether you're part of it or not. Abuela was nodding approvingly, but Elena looked torn, hope and skepticism warring in her expression. This sounds like another performance, she said quietly. Like you're trying to buy your way back into my life. Maybe it is, Marcus admitted. Maybe I don't know the difference yet between what's real and what's reflex. But I want to learn. And I want to learn with you, if you'll let me. No more lies, no more experiments. Just 2 people trying to build something that matters. Outside, workers were entering the building, carrying tools and heaters. The sound of repair echoed through the walls. Not destruction, but restoration. Something broken, being made whole. Elena looked at her grandmother, who shrugged as if to say, your choice, mija. Then she looked back at Marcus, and he saw the moment she decided to be brave too. Okay, she said. Not okay like everything's fixed. Okay like, we can try. Slowly, with honesty. And if you lie to me again, even once, we're done. Completely. I understand. And I'm not running anything until I've been in every building, talked to every tenant, understood what they actually need. This isn't about what looks good on paper or in press releases. I wouldn't want it any other way. Elena stood, extended her hand, formal, careful, the way you'd seal a business deal. But when Marcus took it, she held on for a moment longer than necessary. And in that moment, he felt the fragile possibility of something real, beginning. Don't make me regret this, she said. I'll spend every day trying not to, he promised. And there, in a 3rd-floor walk-up with pipes being repaired and heat being restored, surrounded by the evidence of what happens when you finally tell the truth, Marcus Webb began the hardest work of his life. Not building an empire, but building trust with someone who'd taught him that truth lives in the hands and that the most important thing you can build is something that helps people stay. Spring came slowly to the Bronx, the way it always did. Reluctant, earned, fought for through the last bitter weeks of March, until finally the trees outside Elena's grandmother's building began to bud. Marcus stood on the sidewalk looking up at the facade, which now bore a small bronze plaque, preserved in partnership with the Crotona Community Trust. Building restored, 2025. 6 months had passed since that December night when everything had collapsed and rebuilt itself. 6 months of the hardest, most honest work Marcus had ever done. He'd kept his promise, every single one. The Web Industries Affordable Housing Division was real. Not a tax write-off or a publicity stunt, but an actual commitment with Elena as co-director. She'd insisted on spending 3 months just listening, visiting every property in the portfolio, sitting in kitchens and living rooms, learning what people actually needed. Marcus had gone with her to most of those visits, not as a CEO, but as someone learning to see what he'd been blind to. They'd discovered burst pipes and broken heating systems, landlords who'd been ignoring maintenance requests, families 1 rent increase away from displacement. And they'd fixed it, slowly, building by building, conversation by conversation. Marcus had fired half his property management team and hired people Elena trusted, people from the neighborhoods, people who understood that housing was about dignity, not just revenue streams. The company took a hit on quarterly earnings. The board had been furious. Marcus had stood firm. Some things matter more than profit margins, he'd told them. Several board members had resigned. Marcus had slept better than he had in years. The construction site project had been completed in April, on time, under budget, with every original tenant able to return to renovated apartments they could actually afford. The crew had thrown a party on the finished rooftop, and Tommy had made a speech about how Mark taught us that rich guys can learn to be human if they're willing to shut up and listen. Marcus had laughed until he cried. His relationship with Elena had been the slowest build of all. Careful, intentional, constructed with the kind of patience you'd use on a building with historic bones. They'd started with coffee meetings to discuss projects, professional and appropriate. Then dinners after site visits, where they'd talk about architecture and community and slowly, carefully about themselves. Marcus told her about growing up poor in Detroit, about his mother working 3 jobs, about the scholarship essay he'd written by flashlight that had changed everything. Elena told him about losing her mother young, about learning carpentry as a way to feel close to her Tio, about the fear that she'd never be more than someone holding her family together. In February, on the anniversary of the pipe bursting, Marcus had shown up at her grandmother's apartment with roses and an apology. "I know I don't deserve a second chance at this, at us, but I'm asking anyway." Elena had looked at him for a long moment. Then, "One date, real date, and you have to meet my whole family." The family dinner had been terrifying and wonderful. Her Tio had grilled him about his intentions. Her brother had asked pointed questions about company policy. Her abuela had simply smiled and served him enough food to feed a small army. And when Marcus had helped clear the dishes, she'd patted his hand and said, "Mija chose well. This time you earned it." They'd taken it slow. Dates that were actually dates. Conversations that lasted until 3 in the morning. The gradual building of trust that comes from showing up consistently, honestly, without the armor of performance. Marcus learned that Elena laughed at terrible puns and cried at dog videos and had opinions about building materials that could last hours. Elena learned that Marcus was funny when he wasn't trying to be impressive, that he remembered small details, that he'd been so lonely in his old life, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be known. In April, she'd kissed him, really kissed him. Not a cautious brush of lips, but something that felt like a door opening. They'd been on the rooftop of the completed building, looking out at the neighborhood lit up in the spring dusk, and she'd turned to him and said, "I forgive you, completely, and I want to try this. Really try. Not as colleagues or friends, but as us." Marcus had kissed her back like she was air after drowning. Now, in May, they were meeting her family for a Sunday dinner. The big kind, the everyone kind, the kind that meant something. Marcus's hands were sweating as he pressed the buzzer. "Breathe," Elena said, appearing beside him in a sundress the color of sage, her hair loose around her shoulders. "They already love you. Abuela's been cooking since yesterday." "I'm nervous," Marcus admitted. "Good. Shows you care." She took his hand. Easy now. Natural, the way people touch when they've earned the right to each other's space. "Come on, let's go be with family." The apartment was chaos in the best way. Elena's brother showing off his engineering project, her Tio arguing about baseball, cousins Marcus was still learning to name, and through it all, her abuela presiding over a table that groaned under the weight of pernil and arroz con gandules and pastels. Marcus had brought wine and flowers, and her abuela had kissed both his cheeks and said, "Welcome home, mijo." Home. The word lodged in his chest, warm and impossible. During dinner, Elena's brother asked about the new affordable housing initiative. Marcus started to answer, but Elena jumped in, talking about the community meetings they'd organized, the tenants who were now part of the decision-making process, the buildings being preserved rather than demolished. Her eyes were bright with passion, her hands moving as she spoke, and Marcus watched her with something like awe. This was what love looked like, he realized. Not Instagram photos or charity galas or performing for an audience. Just this, a crowded table, cheap wine, someone's kid spilling rice on his expensive shoes, and Elena laughing beside him, her hand finding his under the table. After dinner, they escaped to the rooftop, their spot now, the place they'd return to when they needed to breathe. The city spread below them, infinite and humming with life. Elena leaned against the railing, and Marcus stood behind her, his arms around her waist, his chin on her shoulder. "I have something to tell you," she said quietly. Marcus's heart stuttered. "Okay. I got an offer, a big firm in Boston, lead architect position, triple my current salary." She paused. "I turned it down." "Elena, let me finish." She turned in his arms to face him. "I turned it down because what we're building here matters more than money. Because my abuela is 3 blocks away and my family is here, and the work we're doing is changing actual lives." She took a breath. "And because you're here. And I'm not running from something good just because it's complicated, or because I'm scared." Marcus felt his eyes sting. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She touched his face, gentle and certain. "I spent my whole life being the strong one, the one who holds everything together. And then you showed up, messy and broken and honest in a way that terrified me. And you taught me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that I could lean on someone and not disappear. You taught me I was worth knowing without the fortune attached," Marcus said. "That truth lives in hands, and I'd been building things that didn't matter. You gave me my life back. So we're even. Not even close. You're way ahead." He kissed her softly, tasting like her abuela's flan and coffee and home. "I love you, Elena Ruiz. I think I have since you handed me those 2 big gloves and showed me how to hold a saw without losing a finger." Elena laughed, that sound he'd learned to live for. "I love you too, Marcus Webb. Even though you lied to me and wore terrible thrift store flannel and made me fall for you while pretending to be someone else." "I was never pretending to be someone else," Marcus said quietly. "I was finally learning how to be myself." They stood there as the city darkened around them, as spring settled into the bones of the neighborhood they were helping preserve. Below them, in her grandmother's apartment, family gathered. Around them, buildings they'd saved stood solid against the sky. And between them, this fragile, necessary, real thing they'd built from broken pieces and second chances, and the courage to be honest. Marcus thought about the cashmere coat, still hanging in his Central Park apartment that he rarely visited anymore. He thought about Vanessa, who'd married Richard Ashford in March, in a ceremony that had made all the society pages. He thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, testing the wrong person, asking the wrong questions, hiding from his own life. And then he stopped thinking about any of it, because Elena was pulling him toward the roof access, laughing about her tio's terrible jokes and her brother's new girlfriend and whether they should bring coffee to her abuela, or if she'd already had too much. This was the life he'd been looking for when he'd stripped everything away. Not the test. Not the performance. Just this. Small moments and big love and the daily work of showing up honestly for someone who saw him, really saw him, and chose him anyway. Truth lived in the hands Elena had taught him. And his hands were holding hers, building a life that mattered, reaching for something real. Finally real. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever hidden parts of yourself, or feared being loved for the wrong reasons, or found that real connection happens in unexpected places, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. And subscribe, because every heart deserves a story that reminds them You are worth knowing exactly as you are.